This helmet costs 7,000 euros. And in this video, I want to explain to you why it costs so much, what these modern helmets are made out of, and what cool technical features they all feature. But before we do that, I would like to give you a quick review of how motorsport helmets have changed over time. In the first days of motorsport, safety wasn't a thing at all. And so you would see most of the drivers just wear a cloth or a leather cap in order to protect their head from the cool air when they raced, combined with some goggles that would prevent their eyes from stone or dirt on the track. And already back then, especially after the Second World War, a lot of people were worried about head injuries that would occur because their heads weren't protected properly. This resulted in some drivers wearing a sort of builder's hat with a chin strap in order to protect their heads when they crashed. But because this only would protect some parts of your head, it wasn't a really good option, but it was still an improvement from the cloth or leather caps that you had seen some years ago. But this would change in 1954 when Bell brought out its first mass-produced helmet, which was solely designed for motor racing. This helmet was an actual improvement from the hard-covered builder's hats that we had previously, because you could now actually protect the sides and the back of your head as well, giving you an actual protection for the first time in motor racing. But as you can see, there is still a massive hole in the front part of the helmet, which means that basically the entire face was unprotected. And because the driver's face was still uncovered, some of them started to use cloths in order to protect their mouth and their nose from getting in any oil or dust on the track. And although it became pretty much the standard for F1 drivers to wear in the 1950s and 1960s, a lot of them were still worried that they could still be hurt in an accident because some parts of their face were still not covered. And so in the late 1960s, some drivers started to wear some dirt bike helmets instead, because these helmets were actually able to protect the driver's jaw and mouth from getting hit by anything in a crash. This was because dirt bikers were used to getting a lot of dirt or stones thrown at their face when they drive behind another driver, and because they didn't want to have dirt or stones as a breakfast every 2 weeks, they started to prepare their helmets in a way to protect them from getting hit in the face by stones or dirt. And as the system proved itself over the years, more and more drivers started to use it around the beginning of the 1970s. And while it was still updated with things like movable visors, it is pretty much the standard thing we still see in racing. A closed helmet with an open part for the eyes to see through with a visor that you can move up and down. But of course, helmets improved over time. And this is actually also the reason why these helmets get so expensive. Because we want to make helmets more and more safer for drivers when they race around racetracks at blistering speeds. But what are these modern helmets actually made out of in order to protect the driver's head so well? In order to explain it to you better, I would say we start with the outside part of the helmet and go deeper layer by layer in order to explain to you how a helmet is actually structured. The first part of the helmet is made out of a carbon fiber shell with some Kevlar inside of it. As most of you know, carbon fiber is a material widely used in motorsport, not only for the helmets, but also for the cars and other parts as well. The reason why it is used so widely in motorsport is because it is extremely strong and has a great stiffness, while on the other hand also being extremely lightweight. And this extra sheet of Kevlar is put into the carbon shell to make the helmet fireproof, because Kevlar is extremely fire resistant, which means that it doesn't start to burn when it is hit by high temperatures, which makes it very useful in motorsport because some fires can occur here or there. I mean, just think about the extreme accident that Romain Grosjean had on the 2020 Bahrain Grand Prix. Inside of this carbon shell, we then have some styrofoam combined with some normal foam in order to fit the driver's head as tight as possible. This is because you don't want the helmet to start wiggling on the driver's head when he races around the circuit. And to make it more comfortable for the driver to wear the helmet, some soft foam wrapped in some fireproofing material is used as the inner layer of the helmet. And of course, you still have some other materials that are used in the helmet, for example screws to fixate the driver's visor on the helmet. But I think what we still have to keep in mind is that while have all of these safety features inside of the helmet, it only weighs around 1.5 kilograms. It's incredible for me to see so many safety features implemented into a thing that only weighs around 1.5 kilograms. It's incredible. And what's even crazier is that this isn't the only thing. Because while helmets protect the driver's head very well, it's not the only thing they do. They still have some cool features in order to make it easier for the drivers to race. For example, and as a lot of you might know, F1 helmets have some holes in the front of the helmet in order to make it possible for the driver to breathe during the race. Of course, these holes are also covered with some meshes in order to prevent the driver from getting in any dirt or stones that are thrown up by other cars in front of them. But these are not the only holes in an F1 helmet, making it possible for the driver to cool down. Because if you look on the top of a helmet, you can see that there are some holes as well, making it possible for the driver to cool down as well. But while we're already at the top of the helmet, you might have noticed that some drivers wear sort of flaps on the back of the helmet. They do this in order to make the helmet more aerodynamically efficient and to affect the aerodynamic of the car less. But these helmets not only try to cool down the driver's head or being more aerodynamically efficient, they also try to help the drivers in the rain. And one key part for this plays the visor, because what can happen during a wet race is that some bits of rain go through the holes in the front of the helmet, making the visor foggy and for the driver harder to see during the wet race. But these modern visors actually can help you with this, because they have some thin wires inside of them, making it possible to heat them up and to reduce the fog on them, which makes it better for the driver to see during a wet race. But that's not the only thing these modern visors can do, because they can also adjust to the outside sunlight conditions. A good example for this is the Monaco tunnel, because when you enter or exit this tunnel, the level of brightness changes rapidly, and the driver's eyes normally would have to adjust for a few seconds to the level of brightness. But with this visor, they can still see perfectly and prepare themselves really good for the next corner. And the newest feature on these helmets doesn't really help the drivers, but rather the fans, to get a better impression of what it is like to drive inside an F1 car. I'm of course speaking about the helmet cam inside of the driver's helmet. It makes it possible for the fan to experience what it is actually like to drive an F1 car just from outside the cockpit, which I think is really cool. But what do you think about these modern helmets? What is your favorite feature in them? And what do you think should be added in the future? Thank you for watching. Feel free to subscribe. And until then, I will see you next time.